I've never shared this on camera before. These are personal. They belong to my marriage, to my husband, and to the private space we've built together over the years. But I'm sharing them today because I know from both my clinical work and my own lived experience that what works in our bedroom could change everything in yours. These are 3 things I actually do with my husband. 3 intimate practices that I bring not just as a wife, but as a woman who has spent over a decade studying the science of male desire, male arousal, and what men over 60 actually need in order to feel fully alive in their intimate lives. And the difference these 3 things have made to our connection, to the warmth between us, to the desire, to the quality of our intimacy, is something I wish every couple over 60 could experience. So today, I'm giving it to you. Stay with me. For those of you who are new here, my name is Dr. Julia Rhodes. I am a certified men's sex therapist with over a decade of clinical experience working exclusively in the space of male sexual health. But today, I am not speaking to you primarily as a clinician. Today, I am speaking to you as a wife, as a woman who is in a real marriage with a real husband, navigating the same beautiful and complex terrain of long-term intimacy that so many of you are walking right now. The difference, and I say this not to boast, but because it is genuinely relevant to everything I am about to share, is that I have the clinical knowledge to understand precisely why certain things work, why certain moments land differently, why certain practices unlock something in my husband that nothing else reaches. And today, for the first time, I am bringing that knowledge out of my clinic and into our bedroom. Figuratively speaking, of course. Before we go any further, if you are someone who wants real, honest, research-backed conversations about intimacy and sexual health for men and couples over 60, please subscribe to this channel right now. What I create here is different. It is warm, it is clinically grounded, and it is always, always aimed at giving you the information that no one else is giving you. Hit subscribe, and let's get into the 3 things. Why intimacy after 60 needs a different approach. Before I share the 3 practices, I want to give you the foundation, because without understanding what is actually happening in the male body and brain after 60, these practices might seem like nice ideas. With that understanding, they become something far more powerful. They become precision tools. Here is the most important thing I want you to know about male desire after 60. It changes. Not disappears, not diminishes into irrelevance. It changes. And the men and the partners of men who understand how it changes are the ones who find that intimacy in their 60s and beyond can be richer, deeper, and more genuinely satisfying than anything that came before. Let me explain what I mean. Researchers and sex therapists, including the groundbreaking work of Dr. Emily Nagoski, distinguish between 2 types of sexual desire. The first is spontaneous desire, the kind that appears without prompting. You are sitting reading the newspaper and suddenly you want your partner. It arrives on its own, uninvited, unearned. Younger men tend to experience a great deal of spontaneous desire. Testosterone is high. The dopaminergic reward system is highly reactive. Arousal can be triggered by almost anything. The second type is responsive desire, and this is the type that becomes increasingly dominant in men as they move through their 50s and into their 60s and beyond. Responsive desire does not arrive uninvited. It awakens in response to the right conditions, the right context, the right emotional environment, the right physical invitation. This is not a dysfunction. This is not a loss. It is a shift, and it is a shift that when a couple understands it and responds to it intelligently, opens the door to a quality of intentional, deeply felt intimacy that spontaneous desire, for all its urgency, rarely produces. But here is the critical point. Responsive desire requires cultivation. It requires someone to create the conditions in which it can awaken. And that is exactly what the 3 practices I am about to share are designed to do. Each one of them, in a different way, creates the neurological and emotional conditions in which my husband's desire, his responsive desire, can rise fully, safely, and without the shadow of performance anxiety or self-consciousness that derails so many couples in this stage of life. Let me take you through them one by one. The first intimate thing, intentional anticipation. The first thing I do has nothing to do with the bedroom. In fact, it often happens hours before we are anywhere near it. I call it intentional anticipation, and it is, without question, the single most powerful intimacy tool I have ever used, both in my clinical practice and in my own marriage. Here is the neuroscience behind it. Your brain's reward circuitry, the mesolimbic dopamine pathway I have discussed on this channel before, does something remarkable when it comes to desire and pleasure. It does not simply respond to reward in the moment it arrives. It responds, often even more powerfully, to the anticipation of reward. Researchers have found that dopamine levels, the neurochemical that drives motivation, desire, and the impulse to seek pleasure, rise significantly during the period of anticipation before a rewarding experience. In some studies, the dopaminergic response during anticipation is actually stronger than the response during the experience itself. What this means for intimacy is profound. The desire your husband feels when you finally come together in the bedroom is not only shaped by what happens in the bedroom, it is shaped powerfully, measurably, by everything that happened in the hours before, by the moments of connection throughout the day, by the look that lingered a little longer than usual, by the text message that arrived at 2 p.m. and made him feel desired before dinner. This is something I practice deliberately in my own marriage. I build anticipation, intentionally, strategically, and with full awareness of what it is doing to my husband's neurological state by the time we are actually together. What does this look like in practice? It looks like a message during the day, not explicit, not performative, but specific. Something that tells him I have been thinking about him. Something that makes him feel seen and wanted in the middle of an ordinary Tuesday. It looks like a moment of deliberate eye contact at dinner, not a glance, eye contact. The kind that communicates something without a single word being spoken. It looks like a hand on the small of his back as I pass him in the kitchen. A touch that is not sexual, but is absolutely intentional. That says, I am aware of you. I want you. Not urgently, not performatively, just genuinely. It looks like saying out loud in a quiet moment before anything has happened, I've been looking forward to tonight. That sentence alone, I have seen what it does. In my marriage and in the marriages of the couples I work with, it activates something. It takes responsive desire and gives it somewhere to go. For men over 60, whose desire increasingly needs an invitation rather than arriving spontaneously, this kind of intentional anticipation is not foreplay in the traditional sense. It is something far more important. It is the architecture of desire itself. It is the building of the neurological runway that allows arousal to take flight naturally, comfortably, and without pressure. If you take nothing else from this video, take this. Start earlier. Start hours earlier. Start with a message, a look, a word, and watch what it does to the quality of your evening together. The second intimate thing, skin-to-skin presence. The second thing I do is something that might surprise you. It is not a technique. It is not a skill. It requires no particular expertise or knowledge to perform. It is simply this: I stay close, deliberately, unhurriedly, with my full physical presence and without an agenda. Let me explain why this matters so much, because the science behind it is something I find genuinely beautiful. When two people engage in sustained, deliberate skin-to-skin contact, not sexual contact necessarily, simply warm, unhurried physical closeness, the brain releases a hormone called oxytocin. You may have heard it called the bonding hormone or the love hormone. Those descriptions are accurate, but they undersell what oxytocin actually does physiologically. Peer-reviewed research published in journals including Psychoneuroendocrinology has demonstrated that oxytocin release through physical touch produces a cascade of neurological and physiological effects that are directly relevant to intimacy. It measurably reduces cortisol, the body's primary stress hormone. It lowers psychological defensiveness. It deepens the felt sense of safety and connection between partners. And it creates, at a neurological level, the conditions in which vulnerability, the kind of vulnerability that genuine intimacy requires, becomes possible. For men over 60, this is not a nice to have. It is a clinical necessity. Here is why. One of the most significant and least discussed barriers to sexual performance in men over 60 is performance anxiety. The fear of not being able to perform. The self-consciousness that creeps in when arousal is slower than it once was, when the body doesn't respond with the immediacy it once did. That anxiety, that cortisol-driven psychological tension, is one of the most reliable arousal inhibitors in the clinical literature, and oxytocin is its direct neurological antidote. When my husband and I are close, when I am simply present with him, unhurried and without expectation, something in him settles. The guardedness softens. The self-consciousness that might otherwise sit between us dissolves. Not because I have done anything dramatic, not because I have deployed a technique or executed a strategy, but because I have offered him something that the research confirms men in this stage of life need profoundly and receive far too rarely. Unhurried physical presence, without agenda, without performance expectation, simply, I am here. I am close to you. Nothing needs to happen right now. I just want to be near you. What this looks like in practice in our marriage is simple. It looks like lying close after the lights go out, not with intention, just with warmth. It looks like sitting together in the evening with actual physical contact, rather than on opposite ends of the sofa. It looks like a long embrace, not a greeting hug, not a transactional squeeze, but a real, sustained hold that communicates, I have nowhere else to be. It looks like what used to be called, before we all became so busy and so goal-oriented, simply being together. I want to say something to the partners watching this. The men in your life, particularly the men over 60 in your life, are navigating a stage of physical and neurological change that most of them have no language for. They do not always know how to ask for this kind of presence. Many of them would not know how to name what they need, even if you ask them directly. But the research is clear, and my clinical experience confirms it without exception. Emotional safety, the felt sense of being accepted and wanted without condition or performance expectation, is one of the strongest independent predictors of left sexual function in men over 55. Stronger in some clinical analyses than physical health markers. Your physical presence, warm, unhurried, and without agenda, is not passive. It is one of the most active and powerful contributions you can make to the intimacy in your relationship. It is the second thing I do, and it changes everything. The third intimate thing, words at the right moment. The third practice is the one I hesitated most to share, not because it is complicated, it is actually the simplest of the three, but because it is the most personal, the most specific to my marriage, the most vulnerable to put into words on a public platform. And yet, it is the one I most want you to hear, because the research behind it is so clear, and the impact of it in my own marriage has been so significant that keeping it to myself feels almost clinical negligent. The third thing I do is this. I tell my husband in specific and sincere words exactly what he does to me, exactly what I find beautiful about him, exactly what I desire about him, not in a general performative way, but with the kind of specificity that tells him I actually mean it. I use language as an intimacy tool, and I use it with deliberate attention to timing. Here is the science that sits behind this practice. Research in male sexual psychology consistently identifies sexual self-confidence as one of the most powerful predictors of sexual satisfaction and erectile function in men over 60. Men in this age group are disproportionately affected by the quiet erosion of sexual self-confidence that accompanies aging, the self-consciousness about a body that has changed, the uncertainty about performance, the unspoken fear of disappointing a partner they love. That erosion does not announce itself loudly. It settles in quietly over time, and it sits in the room with a couple long before either of them acknowledges it. And here is what the research also shows. Deliberate verbal affirmation from a partner, specific, sincere, and timed with emotional intelligence, activates the brain's reward circuitry in ways that no physical technique alone can replicate. It directly addresses the neurological architecture of sexual confidence. It tells the brain, you are desired, you are enough, you are more than enough. For a man whose sexual confidence has been quietly eroding, and for most men over 60 it has been, whether they would admit it or not, that message, delivered by the person whose opinion matters most, lands somewhere very deep. What does this look like in practice? It does not look like flattery. It does not look like performance or exaggeration. My husband would see through that in an instant, and so would yours. It looks like specificity. It is not, you are so attractive. It is, the way you looked at me across the room tonight, I haven't been able to stop thinking about it. It is not, you are wonderful. It is, when you put your hand there, it makes me feel completely safe. It is not a compliment. It is a confession. And the difference between the two, in terms of how they land in the nervous system of a man who has been quietly wondering whether he is still desirable, is vast. Timing matters enormously here. The right words at the wrong moment can feel awkward, even clinical. But the right words at the right moment, in a quiet pause, in a moment of genuine closeness, at a time when your husband is present and unhurried, can reach him in a way that nothing else does. I have watched this truth play out in my clinical practice for over a decade. Men who had largely stopped believing they were desired by their partners, men who had quietly internalized years of silence as confirmation of that fear, transformed when their partners learned to speak this language. Not dramatically, not overnight, but steadily, meaningfully, in the way that real change always happens, gradually, then suddenly. And in my own marriage, my husband, who is a private man and would likely prefer I not describe him in too much detail on the internet, I can tell you this much. The moments when I have chosen words over silence, specificity over generality, confession over compliment, those are the moments that have deepened our intimacy in ways that I treasure more than I know how to say. The thread that connects all three, emotional safety. I want to pause before we bring this all together, because there is something that runs beneath all three of these practices like a quiet current, something that connects them at their root and explains at a deeper level why they work. It is emotional safety. A landmark study published in the Journal of Sexual Medicine found that relationship satisfaction and perceived emotional security were among the strongest independent predictors of erectile function in men over 55. Stronger, in some analyses, than physical health variables, stronger than testosterone levels, stronger than cardiovascular markers. Let that land for a moment. The feeling of being emotionally safe, genuinely, unconditionally safe, with a partner was a more reliable predictor of sexual function than the man's physical health. This finding reframes everything. It reframes what intimacy actually is, not a physical act performed by two bodies, but an emotional ecosystem, one that two people build together over time through thousands of small moments of chosen presence, chosen words, chosen closeness. Intentional anticipation builds emotional safety because it tells a man that he is desired before anything is required of him. Skin-to-skin presence builds emotional safety because it tells a man that he is wanted without condition, that nothing needs to be performed or proven. Verbal affirmation builds emotional safety because it tells a man that the person who knows him most intimately still finds him, specifically and sincerely, desirable. All three practices, at their core, are delivering the same message. You are enough. You are wanted. You are safe here. And for a man over 60 who has been quietly carrying the weight of self-consciousness, performance anxiety, and unspoken uncertainty, that message, delivered consistently and sincerely, is not just emotionally meaningful, it is neurologically transformative. What these three things have done for our marriage. I want to speak personally for a moment as a wife, not a clinician. My husband and I have been together for a long time, long enough to have moved through every season that a real relationship passes through. The urgent passion of the early years, the deep comfort of the middle years, and now this stage, which I will be honest with you about, is the one I was least prepared for and the one I have come to love the most. Intimacy in this stage of our marriage is different from what it was at 35 or 45. It is slower. It is quieter. There is less urgency and more intention, less spontaneity and more deliberateness. And what I have discovered, what I want to offer you is something genuinely hard-won and worth hearing, is that slower and more intentional does not mean lesser. It means different. And in many of the ways that matter most, it means more. The three practices I have shared with you today did not appear in our marriage fully formed. They developed over time, shaped by my clinical knowledge and by the honest, ongoing conversation that a long marriage requires if it is going to stay alive. Intentional anticipation changed the texture of our ordinary days. It made Tuesday evenings feel like something to look forward to. It put a warmth into the in-between moments of our life together that had quietly faded without either of us quite noticing. Physical presence, choosing closeness, choosing contact, choosing to be near each other without an agenda, rebuilt something between us that I think long-term couples lose so gradually they almost never notice it's gone. The simple animal comfort of another body close to yours, of being held without being asked to perform, of warmth without expectation, and words. The specific, sincere, perfectly timed words gave my husband something back that I think the years had slowly taken. Not his capability, not his vitality, but his confidence in being desired. His sense of himself as a man his wife still wanted, specifically, genuinely, without condition. I am not telling you our marriage is perfect. It is not. No marriage is. But I am telling you that these three practices have made it more alive than I honestly expected it to be at this stage of our lives. And that feels worth saying out loud. On camera, for the first time. For you. Let's bring this home. 3 intimate things, grounded in neuroscience, lived in a real marriage, and offered to you today because I believe, deeply, clinically, and personally, that the intimacy you want in your relationship is not behind you. It is available to you right now, tonight if you choose it. The first thing, intentional anticipation. Start earlier than you think you need to. Build desire in the hours before you are ever in the same room. A message, a look, a sentence that says, "I have been thinking about you." Trust the dopamine pathway, trust the neuroscience, and trust that the bedroom begins long before the bedroom. The second thing, skin-to-skin presence. Choose closeness without agenda. Offer your partner the one thing the research says matters more than almost anything else, the felt sense of being wanted without condition. Let your physical presence say what words sometimes cannot. I am here. I am not going anywhere. You are safe with me. The third thing, words at the right moment. Speak specifically, speak sincerely. Tell your partner not that they are wonderful in the abstract, but what precisely they do to you, what you find beautiful, what you desire. Make it a confession, not a compliment, and choose your moment with the care it deserves. And beneath all three, the thread that connects them, emotional safety. The ecosystem in which everything else becomes possible, built not in grand gestures, but in the accumulated weight of 1,000 small, chosen moments of presence, warmth, and sincere desire. I want to say something directly to the men watching. If your partner has watched this video, or if you find a way to share it with them, I want you to know that what they are offering you when they try these things is not a technique. It is a gift. It is chosen presence. It is deliberate desire. Receive it. Let it land. And if something in this video has helped you understand yourself a little better, understand why you respond the way you do, why certain things reach you and others don't, then let that understanding open a conversation between you. Because the most intimate thing any couple can do is tell each other the truth about what they need, and you now have a language for it. If this video reached you today, if something in it felt personal or true or like something you needed to hear, I want you to do two things. First, share it with your partner, with a friend who you know is navigating this season of life, with anyone who deserves to know that intimacy after 60 is not a consolation prize. It is, if you tend it with knowledge and intention, one of the most extraordinary things available to you. Second, leave me a comment. Tell me which of the three practices resonated most with you. Tell me what you are going to try first. Tell me what you want me to talk about next, because this community shapes everything I create here, and your words matter to me more than you know. Subscribe if you haven't already, and know that every single week I am here with the same honesty, the same warmth, and the same commitment to giving you the conversations that no one else is having. Thank you for trusting me with something this personal today. I'm Dr. Julia Rhodes. I'll see you in the next one.